Welcome to the Newsome MMA betting podcast, sponsored by CBD Life UK. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and today I'm going to be breaking down UFC Fight Night 129 in Santiago, Chile. Now, at first with this card, I honestly didn't think it was going to be very bettable. When I was watching tape, I thought there was going to be a lot of inflated lines and lines that were steamed by the public. I just saw a lot of huge favourites in the card, but I'm really surprised with where the lines have settled. You know, some of the opening lines weren't that great, some were. But where they've settled, I actually think the card's quite bettable, and I also think the card's going to be a really good night as well. I think we're gonna see a lot of a lot of crazy fights. I also think we're going to see a very similar card to the last Mexico card. You know, it was finish after finish in that card, some really quick fights as well. I do see a similar pattern here, and I just think it's going to be a great night. So, as always, I've listed my bets for you guys. I'll break those down in full for you. Anything else that I haven't bet on, I will talk about at the end. I'll put it into the quick fire round. I'll give you a quick pick, method of victory, and why I've passed on that bet as well. So without further ado, we'll just jump straight into the full breakdowns. The first full breakdown of the night, we've got Jared Cannonier versus Dominick Reyes. Now, I've got 4 units on Dominick Reyes at minus 181. The line's roughly around the minus 240, minus 250 mark now, so I did really beat that line. I think I had to get up at like 4 a.m. in the morning for it. You know, dedicated to this game, always grinding. But ultimately, I just think it's a really horrible stylistic matchup for Cannonier. Reyes is a southpaw fighter, opposed to Cannonier, who fights orthodox. That leaves a nice open body for Reyes, someone that does like to rip those kicks. If he starts mixing in the levels of the kicks as well, from low, medium, high, you know, leg, body, head, I think he'll really start making Cannonier guess what's coming next. Once fighters start guessing what's coming next, it really does start to halt their game as well. I think Reyes is a technically sound fighter. He fights really long. He's got a huge height. He's got a huge reach advantage against Cannonier. So Cannonier is going to have to really get inside, and it's always tough to do when a fighter's fighting somebody that's physically bigger than them and someone that does fight long as well and wants to stay at range. Cannonier is really going to have to work to get inside, and I think that's where he's going to have problems, because Cannonier is not the greatest mover. I don't think he's got great movement on the feet. His footwork's great when he's throwing his strikes. You know, he's got a bit of a boxing background, so one of the more natural boxers in the light heavyweight division for sure. But he sort of, before he starts throwing, he's sort of plodding forward, not really trying to cut off angles. His head movement isn't great as well. He has openings in his guard. That's obviously right next to his chin. Now, another punch that I've noticed in when I was watching tape from Dominick Reyes is the straight left. He's got a nasty straight left, and I can just see the opening that Reyes is going to be hitting Cannonier with, and Cannonier really needs to get a hold of that situation quickly. Otherwise, it will be an early night for him. He just needs to do something. He just needs to change something up, Cannonier, because from what I've seen in tape, his movement isn't good enough to beat somebody like Dominick Reyes. Now, yeah, Reyes is still pretty green himself. He hasn't really had that step up in competition yet. This is his step up, in my opinion, from his previous fights. I'll talk a little bit about that later on, though. Now, like I've said, the opening's going to be there for Reyes, in my opinion, on the feet, but this is a guy that's got a wrestling background as well. He hasn't got any great credentials. I just know that he's wrestled a bit in college, I believe, but he's got good takedowns. He completes a lot of his takedowns as well, and he's got decent top control. He's really quite underrated on the mat, and we saw in the Cannonier and Glover Teixeira fight, Cannonier doesn't really offer anything off his back. We also saw in the Blachowicz fight that Cannonier, again, still doesn't have much to offer off his back. I will give Cannonier credit, though. When Blachowicz took him down, he was active in trying to get back up to his feet rather than just accepting position, which is what we saw in the Glover fight. So it is something that I can see that he's been working on, and something that he was conscious of as well. Now, it doesn't stop there for Dominick Reyes. The guy's got a good clinch game as well. Also really good in close quarters when somebody's in his face. He's come from the King of the Cage promotion, and one thing that I noticed about the surroundings when I was watching a couple of his fights in that promotion is that the cage is quite a lot smaller than I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's smaller than the majority of the cages, but it's definitely smaller than the UFC cage, and potentially the small cage that the UFC use for the Ultimate Fighter finales as well, and obviously the Ultimate Fighter fights. And he just seems to, when fighters were charging at him, he just seems to be really calm. He doesn't start panicking. He doesn't start throwing wild stuff and flurrying and really flapping about. He was really calm. He can tie up a nice Muay Thai clinch as well, dropping knees and elbows. He's just a really aggressive fighter. And like I say, he's got underrated wrestling. He's got underrated topside grappling. And I just think Cannonier is going to struggle in this fight. I think that he's going to struggle to get inside. I think he's going to get picked apart at range. If he does get inside, I trust that Reyes can either tie him up in the plum clinch and start raining knees and elbows, or if he really wanted to take it to the mat, get a body lock and trip him down to the mat as well. So I'm sort of comfortable, I think, wherever this fight goes. The only thing that will make me, and I had a similar breakdown of what I'm about to say with the Ally Quinta and Paul Felder fight, even though that didn't happen. I think that if Reyes stays at boxing range with Cannonier, it could get hairy, very hairy, because that eliminates kicks, that eliminates the clinch, and that's, for me, where Cannonier is the better fighter. But Cannonier doesn't move that, like I said, he doesn't move that quickly, or his angles aren't that great. Whereas Reyes he is quick and light on his feet, cool, calm, composed inside the cage. I don't see long periods inside boxing range. I think that Reyes will recognise when it's getting a little bit too much and just move off, angle away, or even close distance to clinch and potentially, start raining, like I said, knees and elbows, or take Cannonier down to the ground. So that's where I would worry, but I'm not convinced that Reyes is daft enough to stay in boxing range for that long and start getting picked, start getting shots landed on him. Now, I know in his last fight, people keep mentioning it. Oh yeah, but he got hit by Jeremy Kimball. He got hurt. I wouldn't say he got hurt. Yes, he got hit, and I actually watched an interview straight after that fight. And the person that interviewed him said, what's your thoughts on the fight? And he was like, yeah, great. But then one of the things he said almost instantly is, I got hit. I need to learn from that. So this is a guy that's still honing his game. This is a guy that's recognising his mistakes. This is a guy that's coming off a win, literally minutes after walking out the cage, where he should be completely and utterly on a different planet with excitement, with how happy he is. And he's talking about the holes in his, the hole that he spotted in his game and what should or shouldn't have happened and what he needs to work on. And that's a guy for me that's driven. And he's made the move from his brother's gym as well, I believe, over to Joe Daddy Stevenson and Robert Drisdale as well, where he's obviously got two great guys in that camp. So everything surrounding Dominick Reyes right now for me is really positive. And yeah, I just think that eventually Cannonier is going to start getting frustrated when he's trying to close distance and not having success. I think once he starts getting frustrated, that's where Reyes will catch him with something. I'm not totally sure how this finishes. I believe it's going to finish inside the distance. I think Reyes is going to finish him, but I'm not sure whether it's going to be... I think it's going to be a shot that drops him. Blachowicz dropped Cannonier in the last fight. I can't remember what shot that was for the life of me, just off the top of my head. I should do, but I can't. But I know he dropped Cannonier and Cannonier got back up, but I've just got a funny feeling that straight left's going to be there, or a head kick if he starts mixing the levels of his kicks. I think he's going to drop Cannonier with something, and then from there, I don't know whether he's going to dive onto a submission or whether he's going to finish him off with strikes. I suppose it's how badly Cannonier's hurt. If he's hurt pretty badly, he'll probably just throw a couple of more punches and wait for the referee to stop it. I think if Cannonier sort of recovers a little bit, but then stays on the ground, he's going to be a little bit dazed. I think he could end up potentially taking his back and sinking in a rear naked choke, but ultimately I think it's going to end inside the distance. Just a couple of things to mention though, that I touched upon earlier. Just the arguments to and from Cannonier and Reyes. So, I've been hearing of people saying, oh yeah, well, Cannonier's fought the much better competition, which is correct, he has. The much better competition being Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira. Now, he's had the step up in competition twice, and he's got exposed twice, and in two different areas as well. So in the Glover fight, he got exposed in the wrestling and the ground department, and in Jan Blachowicz, he's got exposed on the feet. I know there was a couple of takedowns, but ultimately the majority of the fight took place on the feet now. Are these two fighters that I think would beat Reyes? Potentially, yeah. I think Reyes would be a tougher fight for both of them than what Cannonier was, if I'm honest. But you know, we're getting into a bit of MMA math now, which we all know is quite irrelevant. But that's the argument for me. So people are saying that, you know, he's had the step up in competition, and yes, he has, but he's been exposed twice. So, you know, we've now seen what he's like in his step up. Then you look at Cannonier's wins inside the UFC. He's got wins against Nick Rohrick, who was on short notice, and it was his debut as well into the UFC. But it took him 3 rounds to finish Nick. Then we've got Ion Cutelaba. You know what? I give that to Cannonier. That was a good win for him. I actually had Cutelaba to win in that fight. I might have even bet it as well. But ultimately, Cutelaba is just really hittable because he's got that iron chin. He can trust his chin. But the problem is when you coming into a fight with someone that's going to throw more volume than you, which is what Cannonier was about, then you're going to lose the decision, and that's what happened. And then the third and final win that he's got in the UFC, Syuria. So again, just to recap, Nick Rohrick, Ion Cutelaba, Syuria is 3 wins in the UFC. That doesn't scream like amazing competition to me, especially not Nick Rohrick and Syuria. So I'm dubious about the whole step up in competition thing because, like I say, yeah, he has, but he's lost on both opportunities. Whereas Dominick Reyes, this is his step up, and that's cool. People saying, oh yeah, you know, we'll finally see what he's like. How will he face adversity? You know, he's not fought anybody as good as Cannonier before, so he's potentially going to struggle. I get that, right? But saying that Dominick Reyes has fought absolute jobbers and people with poor records and nobodies, I don't buy that argument in this case, and I'll tell you a reason why. Did Conor McGregor fight jobbers? Did he fight cans? Did he fight people with poor records, making his way up into the UFC? Yes, he did. Did Khabib Nurmagomedov fight jobbers? Did he fight cans? Did he fight people with poor records whilst making his way up to the UFC? Yes, he did. Fucking Jon Jones, potentially the greatest fighter of all time, was a plus 155 underdog to Stephan Bonnar. So I'm just not buying this, or he's fought jobbers and, you know, he's not as great as what you might think he is because of his level of competition he's fought. It's bullshit. All these great fighters, all the best fighters that the MMA and the UFC have ever seen have all fought this level of competition whilst making the way up to being the greatest that they can possibly be. And that's a part of the career progression as a fighter. And this is part of Dominick Reyes' career progression as well. I'm not saying he's as good as Khabib Nurmagomedov. I'm not saying he's as good as Conor McGregor or Jon Jones. I'm also not saying his ceiling is as great as those 3 fighters that I've mentioned. They're just prime examples of fighters that have been at the top of the game for years, but will have had the similar career progression as what Dominick Reyes is on right now. So in regards to this whole Cannonier's fought better competition and Reyes has fought jobbers, I just don't buy it at all. You know, I've got nothing really more to say on that matter. I don't buy it. If Cannonier comes in and he beats Dominick Reyes, knocks him out, decisions him, however he beats him, that's not going to be because Cannonier's fought and lost to Glover Teixeira and to Jan Blachowicz, and it's also not going to be because Dominick Reyes has fought a lower level of competition. It's going to be because Cannonier was better on the night. I still believe that Dominick Reyes' ceiling is much higher. The guy's exciting. He's young. He's new to the game. He's unbeaten. He's 8-0. You know, he's 28. The guy's got an entire future ahead of him, and he's exciting. Watch his fights. He's a really, really exciting dude. But yeah, I think he's going to stop Cannonier. I think it's going to be maybe the second round. I think the first round It's true. Cannonier is the best fighter that Dominick Reyes has ever fought. I think Dominick Reyes might, respect that a little bit. I think the first round will be a bit interesting. I think he'll finish him in the second round. So 4 units on Dominick Reyes at -181. The next fight and the next full breakdown and the next bet. So this is one on Twitter that I announced. Well, I didn't announce. That's the interesting part. So on Twitter a few hours ago before the podcast, I said that I will be announcing another bet, rather than posting it on Twitter and then doing a written breakdown on my website. I thought I'll just announce it directly on the betting podcast so people that tune in can listen to the bet. And that's Vicente Luque versus Chad Laprise. And the bet is 3.5 units on Vicente Luque at -187. Now, I was a bit and ahhing whether to bet on this, to be honest. Not because I don't think that Vicente Luque is going to win. I think I was just being a bit too stubborn in regards to the odds. Now, before I went into tape on this, I was really high on Luque. I thought there was, Chad Laprise was just going to absolutely drown in this fight against someone like Vicente Luque. And I was actually quite surprised with what I saw in tape. And I think the fight's going to be a lot closer than what I originally thought, and also what other people are saying and thinking as well. People are thinking it's going to be an easy fight, and hell, it could be. But I'm just reporting, what I see in tape and where I value things. So because of that, I still fancied Luque to win, and I am still confident he's going to win. I just think it's going to be close. So for that reason, I originally wanted anywhere between -150 and -175 for the line. Now I think it opened at about -225, went up to -250. At this point, I was just like, there's no way I'm playing this. But then over the last couple of days, it slowly started to come down, and I spotted it tonight at, I think it was Betfair in the UK. They had it at -187, and I was just looking at the line. I was thinking, well, I wanted -175 was sort of my limit. That's the best possible scenario was -150, which I was never going to get. The worst case, -175, and then I thought, well, there's not a lot of difference between the -175 and the -187, so I played the bet. I think it's going to cash. I think that Vicente Luque might have moments where he's getting tagged a bit, because Chad Laprise's path to victory, and also what I was surprised about is how fast his hands are. He's great at countering. So if Luque's coming forward, throwing punches, he's great at countering. He's also really quick moving in and out of the pocket as well, also whilst throwing strikes. So he'll throw strikes moving in, he'll throw strikes moving out, and he'll do it really fast. I think his hands are quite underrated from the conversations that I've been having and from the opinions that I've been reading. But ultimately, I think Luque's got more paths to victory. He's got the power over Chad Laprise as well, and he's also not a slow striker either. So I think he could get caught at times when Chad Laprise is moving in and out. But ultimately, I think he's got good counters as well. So when Chad's striking, I think Luque will be able to come over the top with his shots. I think he'll be able to pop his jab out as well. I know he's got a decent reach advantage over Chad Laprise. I think it's like 4 or 5 inches reach advantage, which I think will play a part in this as well, because I think the majority of the fight will stay stood up. He's got great footwork, Luque, and like I say, he's got that power. He absolutely sparked Belal Muhammad out. He also knocked Nico Price down at tough, and then went on to finish him by submission. I think it was an anaconda choke, which brings me on to the next point as well. People forget that Vicente Luque is a grappler come striker. So he initially was, like I say, he was a pure well, I wouldn't say a pure grappler, but that's where he really did excel. Then suddenly he started working on his striking, crisped that up, started knocking people out. He's becoming this exciting fighter. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so that's going to be legit. It's not one of these black belts that's given inside a Kinder Egg. And he's also a purple belt in Luta Livre as well, which is sort of a mixture between catch wrestling and judo. So he's got good takedowns, powerful takedowns, and I just think his overall game here is going to be too much for Chad Laprise, and I think he'll stifle him, because Ultimately, I think the fight will start standing. Well, it will start standing, but I think the majority of the fight will take place on the feet. I think that they're gonna be trading shots. I think Chad Laprise, well, I think they'll both have a bit of success on the feet, to be honest. But I think one of two things will happen. I think either Chad Laprise will get caught with a combination, or he'll get caught with the counter after moving in the pocket when he's moving in and out. I think he'll get caught with a shot and get put down, and Luque will finish him. Or, and I genuinely can see this, Chad Laprise getting the better of Luque on the feet, shocking everybody, and Luque just realising that and thinking, right, I need to get this fight to the ground. He's not afraid to do that. I can't remember which fight it was off the top of my head. I think it was the Alvaro Herrera fight. Alvaro Herrera was is a decent striker, and when Luque went into that fight with him, he recognised that, and I think he hit like 4 or 5 takedowns on Herrera and ended up finishing him with a Darce choke and submitted him. So he's not afraid to recognise when he's getting beat on the feet to just go to the mat and submit him on the mat. He's really, really, really well rounded, and is again another young, exciting prospect. So yeah, I could see that. I could see one of them two things happening. Personally, I think he's going to end up beating Chad Laprise on the feet. The only reason I say that is Chad Laprise, his chin isn't completely stable. There is question marks about it. Galore Bofando hit him. I thought he'd finished him. I really did. He hit him in his last fight, knocked him down, proceeded to rain shots down on him, and then Bofando stood up. Laprise got a takedown, took Bofando down, and Bofando didn't have anything on his back, and he finished him with strikes on the mat. And also against Trinaldo, he was finished as well. So dropped and finished, and there is question marks on Chad Laprise's chin for sure. And then you go down to Chad Laprise took Galore Bofando down when it was too much on the feet. If Luque's too much on the feet for Chad Laprise decides to take him down, then he's going to get finished by a submission. I'm pretty confident. So this is the thing with Luque. He's got more power. He's more explosive. I don't think he's quicker, but he can definitely hang in regards to the speed for sure. He's definitely got the better ground game. He's got the better wrestling, the better grappling as well. I just think Luque's overall game is going to be enough to stifle Chad Laprise here. And my prediction is Vicente Luque to beat Laprise by knockout. So moving on to the next full breakdown, we've got Zach Cummings versus Michel Prazeres. Now, Michel Prazeres is my money train. I didn't bet on him in his last fight against Desmond Green. I just had a few issues with, well, not issues, but I had question marks about how good he could be compared to a really good wrestler. Well, he's a D1 wrestler, Des Green. So in this fight, I've bet Michel Prazeres. I've got 1.5 units on him at plus 150. I sort of get why he didn't open his underdog. He opened, I think it was like a minus 130, 140 favourite. I think he opened as Michel Prazeres, and that quickly flipped. Like, we're talking minutes. And now Zach Cummings is the favourite. So, but it's up and down this line. Like I say, I hit it at plus 150. It's now in some places plus 110. So it has been up and down a lot. But I took the stab on Michel Prazeres because at plus 150 there's always value on a fighter like that. He's an absolute tank. He's a powerhouse. His path to victory will be his relentless pressure and then takedowns, and then he's a great topside grappler as well. So just everything I like in a fighter is Michel Prazeres. Now, the one thing that we have to talk about straight away is the size advantage or disadvantage, depending on which way you're looking at. So for anyone that is unsure or does want a bit of a recap on it, Michel Prazeres is being forced up to welterweight here from lightweight. I think he's missed his last he's missed weight in his last 3 fights. It's never the sort of like by 1 pound either. It's by a sizable margin. And I think Dana White and the UFC's just had enough and just said enough is enough. You're moving up to welterweight. That's it. You're done at lightweight. You can't make the weight. I know Brazil Cab MMA banned him from ever fighting at lightweight there again. So even if the UFC does let him in the future, he'll not be able to fight in Brazil at lightweight. So there was all this surrounding him. Then you've got Zach Cummings. This guy's a huge dude. He cuts from, I think it's like minus 220. I'm talking lines now. I think he cuts from 220 pounds. So he's a very big guy as well. Potentially could fight at middleweight if he wanted to. So here you've got two fighters that are just complete. It's a complete mismatch in regards to height and reach. So Zach Cummings is 6 foot, whereas you've got Michel Prazeres that's 5'6", and I think there's like 6 or 7 inch reach in 6 or 7 inches difference in the reach as well. So it's an obvious height and reach advantage for Cummings. But the other thing to mention as well, just really quickly, is Michel Prazeres probably walks, and this is a rough guess, but an educated guess at the same time. I think he walks around at about 190 pounds anyway, so I don't think there's so much difference between the weight that it could cause the problems that I think some people think it. I think people are just looking at the height and reach and just thinking, whoa, this is a complete mismatch, Michel Prazeres is massively undersized. He's undersized in, like I say, in regards to height and reach, but I don't think he's hugely undersized in regards to weight and power. And that's the other thing as well, like I've mentioned, he is a powerhouse. So overall, this physique difference doesn't worry me too much. I think if Prazeres loses this fight, it'll be because Cummings has defended the takedowns, he's boxed him up on the feet, he's kept Prazeres at the end of, Prazeres' chin at the end of his punches, but not because Prazeres was undersized. I mean, I could be wrong. I just don't think I'm going to be. I think if Prazeres loses this fight, it's not going to be because he was so much shorter. It'll be because Zach Cummings has done a great job at staying at range. But that's what I think he can't do. Yes, that's Cummings' clear path to victory here, keeping at range and keeping Prazeres' chin at the end of his punches. But I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. I think Prazeres is going to come out here at the weigh-ins. I think he's going to pull a Johnny Hendricks. I think he's going to miss weight again. That's a hot take, but we'll see. I think he's going to, like I say, miss weight again. I think he's going to ragdoll Cummings. I don't think Cummings can keep at range for 15 minutes. I think he might be able to keep at range for sort of a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes at the most in each round. But eventually, the winging overhead bombs from Prazeres is going to rain down on Cummings. He's going to back Cummings up. He's going to use those strikes and that forward pressure to get a hold of Cummings. He's going to be, like I said, he's smaller, so he's going to be close to the hips. Once he clinches up and gets body locks on Cummings, it's going to be tougher for Cummings to get the underhooks and really get Prazeres off, because again, his underhooks are going to have to come that low. He's almost going to be having to fight him off with, from the wrist rather than from your forearm or your bicep. And I just think, there's a disadvantage in some fights of being smaller, but with that comes advantages as well, and especially when you've got a style like Michel Prazeres, who is just a little tank and will relentlessly come at you with takedowns. I don't think his striking's great. I think that if he can't close the distance, he is going to lose the fight, and I'm like 99.9% sure about that. But even though his striking isn't great, like I said, it's tailored to close the distance and to get a hold of his opponent, which is his game. His striking isn't perfect. It's not. His technique's not great. It's not very crisp. It's not. He's not anywhere close to being like like a boxer or anything. But like I say, it's tailored to completing how he wants to fight. And for me, I just think there's two obvious paths to victories here, and I just think Prazeres' path is far greater. And like I say, it's a path that I love. I love anybody that's trying to close distance, get a hold of their opposition and throw them to the mat and control on the floor. And that's the next part we go to. I don't think the hardest part of Prazeres winning this fight is getting a hold of closing the distance and getting a hold of Cummings and getting him to the mat. I think the hardest part is actually going to be putting Cummings back on the mat and securing a good top position. I think if he can do that in 2 of the rounds, I think he wins the fight by decision. Because once Cummings' back is on the mat, I just don't see him being able to stand up. I see him maybe able to be popping up from a scramble when Prazeres is trying to initially complete the takedown. But I think if Prazeres can secure a good position on top, I'm not sure Cummings will be able to get him off. The guy is, honestly, Prazeres is one of the best grapplers for me in the UFC. I'm not saying he is the best. There's certainly far better than him, but he's up there. He's a legit second degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If you watch his transitions, they're so slick and so they look so effortless. And when you look at his body shape and his size, you just think to yourself, it shouldn't look that slick. It shouldn't look that effortless. You know, he's a big build, and normally those big built guys don't look that great in transitioning, but Prazeres really does. And I think the one thing that might be a little bit different for Prazeres here is transitioning against someone the size of Cummings, because it is going to be different to what he's faced before when you're working up the proverbial pyramid of the transitions in jiu-jitsu on your fighter. When your fighter's longer, it is going to feel a little bit different for him. But you know what? I think Prazeres could potentially be aiming for the north-south position, where he's actually finished 2 of his last 3 opponents with a north-south choke. Because once you've got that north-south choke, then that suddenly eliminates all the height advantage of his fighter on the bottom, because you're at the neck, you're not working over his body. The other position he could potentially wrap up a submission there would be the Darce and Anaconda chokes as well. That also has the same effect. That'll eliminate the height advantage of Cummings also. And just a quick one for the people that might be interested is Tim Kennedy also finished Zach Cummings with a north-south choke as well, which is very interesting. So you've got a guy that's a specialist in it, in Prazeres, a guy that probably will have his advantages in that position as well, because he's a smaller guy, and then he's fighting somebody that has been submitted with a north-south before. I mean, I'm not starting to say, he's definitely going to finish him with a north-south, but there's just little things there that, just interesting bits of information. But ultimately, I think Prazeres is going to actually decision him, not finish him with a north-south choke. I think that, like I mentioned earlier, I think in at least 2 of the rounds, he'll secure a good top position. He'll spend at least a couple of minutes in those positions on the mat. Cummings may get up, but by that point, Prazeres will probably have won that round anyway. So ultimately, I just think it's great value as well. Plus 150. I still think any plus money on Prazeres is always worth taking a pop at. I cashed him as a plus 200 dog against Gilbert Burns when he fought Gilbert Burns. Burns was a huge favourite. People thought Burns was going to run through him. Prazeres beat him pretty handily, and I think the underdog's gonna cash again here. So I've got Michel Prazeres to win by unanimous decision. I've got 1.5 units on him at plus 150. So moving on to the last full breakdown, we've got Enrique Barzola against Brandon Davis. Again, Enrique Barzola is a fighter that I always like to put my money on. He's got obvious paths to victory. He's got clear game plans. He executes perfectly as well. And overall, I just really like the guy. So, as you can tell, Enrique Barzola's my bet. I've got 3.5 units on him at minus 175. I think the line's roughly hovering around the minus 190 mark, so it's moved a little bit, but not too much. I just think Barzola's just going to go out here and do what he always does. He's not going to have a different game plan. I do like betting on the guys that never really seem to change from one fight to the next, because there's going to be no nasty surprises in the fight. Yeah, you might lose the bet, but you'll lose the bet because your fighter's done what he always does and what you knew he was going to do, and the other guy's just been the better guy, which you can take that on the chin. What I don't like doing is betting on a fighter for, say, wrestling, and then you go out there and stand and box for 3 rounds. That gets me on edge. I don't like that sort of stuff. So, like I say, Barzola's style is really obvious. He goes into fights wanting to close the distance and dump his opponent on the mat, and he does it really cleverly. He's got a tidy stand-up game. He's got good leg kicks. He's got really quick hands. He moves in and out of range well as well. But even though he's got this takedown game, and like I say, it's really obvious. Any fighter that he fights is going to have watched tape on him doing this. He stands for long period. He stays standing for long periods of time at the beginning of fights, and it almost tends to make his opponent forget about the takedown threat. And at that point, and almost the people watching as well. So like when I'm watching him fight, I can remember watching his last fight thinking, okay, I thought he was going to shoot takedowns by now. Why hadn't he shot a takedown now? And he's staying standing. He's working his stand up. He's good enough to hang with with this level of competition at least. Anyway, I can't really talk about a high level right now because he's not fought it. But yeah, I'm watching thinking, okay, when's the takedown going to come? And it almost makes the fans forget as well, but then suddenly becomes relentless with it, and you're like, okay, there it is. Davis has got a decent takedown defense. He's also got a good get-up game as well, which we saw in the Kyle Botniak fight. Botniak took him down 3 or 4 times, I think it was, but he did end up popping back up. Now, he doesn't have great separation in the clinch, so when Botniak was taking him down, yes, he was popping back up, but he couldn't get the underhooks in. He couldn't separate and break away very easily. And in fact, the 3 or 4 takedowns from Botniak came in pretty much quick succession because he couldn't break away, or very easily at least. So this might then start to think, okay, well, if he's got a good get-up game and he's got good takedowns, then surely Barzola's not going to be able to execute his game. But this is where Barzola's a little bit of a different wrestler. So this plays perfectly into his game. Because Barzola, he's got takedowns, he's got a good completion rate as well, but his grappling's really poor. He hasn't really got a good top game. So when I've just been talking about Michel Prazeres, transitions really well, keeps his fighters back on the mat. Barzola is the total polar opposite. He's not got great grappling. He can't keep his opponents down for very long on the mat, and they always do seem to pop back up. And like I've just mentioned with Davis, he's got a good get-up game. So this is when people then start thinking, oh, holy shit, well, why have you bet this dude based on those facts? Well, the thing is with Barzola, he knows he hasn't got a great... Well, I think he'll know he hasn't got the greatest of top games, and he's fine with that. That's absolutely okay with Barzola. He'll let his fighters get back up, and he'll just dump them straight back down. And then this is when the lack of separation comes into play, and Barzola will be okay with him getting back up to his feet. Most fighters do that he takes down. You look at all of his fights in the UFC, he doesn't keep his fighters down until later in the round. He'll slowly start to spend a little bit more... later in the fight, he'll slowly start to spend a little bit more time in top control. That's because his fighters are tired out from the amount of times they've been put on the back. He's one of these fighters that scores 7 to 10 takedowns a fight just because they do keep on getting back up. But like I say, he's okay with that because when they get back up, he'll stay attached, or if they do separate, he'll come straight back in again. And then once his opponent starts seeing all these takedowns start coming at him thick and fast and relentlessly, it just halts the ground game. It has to halt it halts the stand-up game. It has to. They will start to fear throwing kicks, overcommitting on strikes because they know they're about to get taken down again. And then also, morally, it's demoralising as well because they're just constantly being dumped on the mat time after time, and there's nothing that they can do about it. And then the cardio starts to take a hit because of that as well. So ultimately then the fight starts to become really easy for Barzola, and that's, I think, what's going to happen here. I think it's going to start off a bit, struggling to take Davis down, might get him down momentarily, he'll pop straight back up. But I think the longer that Barzola does this, the easier the fight will become for him. And then I think we'll see sort of halfway through the second round, and then definitely the third round will be dominant. And I think he'll have won the second round anyway. He'll win the third round. Potentially he could have won the first round as well, because his striking is good enough to hang. I don't see Barzola finishing Davis here whatsoever, but I just see him taking a comfortable decision. I just think, yeah, like I say, he's going to come out, he's going to stay striking for a minute and a half, 2 minutes. He'll make Davis forget about the takedown threat, and the takedowns will start coming, and then it'll just be easy from there. So I think overall, the pressure takedown game from Barzola will be too much for Davis to handle, and I think Barzola will take a 30-27 decision and win comfortably on the scorecards. So just to reiterate on the bets, then I've got 4 units on Dominick Reyes at -181. I've got 3.5 units on Vicente Luque at -187. I've got 1.5 units on Michel Prazeres at +150. And then I've got 3.5 units on Enrique Barzola at -175. So I've got 12 units in total on this card, and it's a little more than I play normally. But, right now I'm on a 6-fight card win streak. Everything's going great. I've also having a bit of luck on my side as well, which is nice, especially after some really some really poor luck earlier on in the year. Things like Jack Hermanson in the last card. I was really confident in him. He hurt his ribs. I think it ended up being. I thought it was knee when I was watching it live. It was pretty lucky that he ended up scoring that win in the 3rd round, because he'd lost the first round. Sorry, he'd won the first round. The second round he'd lost 10-8. So at this point, the best he could have hoped for was a draw. But then he ended up finishing late. So just a bit of luck on there as well. But I'm confident right now. I'm reading fights really well. Everything's going good. So when it comes to spending a little bit more money just for a couple of extra big leans that I had on prices that I am happy with, I don't mind doing it. I'm on a good roll, and I'm looking to make it a 7-fight card winning streak as well. So moving straight into the quickfire round, the first quickfire fight, we've got the main event, Demian Maia against Kamaru Usman. I just want to say credit to Demian Maia for stepping up and taking this fight, because I can't remember who it was, some UFC official unofficially came out and said Kamaru Usman is the most, we didn't use the word fit, he's most ducked fighter pretty much. So basically nobody wants to fight Kamaru Usman, and Demian Maia stepped up on short notice after Santiago Ponzinibbio pulled out of an injury. So credit to Demian Maia, but I do think it's going to be a rough night for him. I think Kamaru Usman's going to get takedowns. Potentially not straight away. I think he will keep it standing to start with. I think he'll load up on bombs with Maia, make Maia trade back with him as well. I don't think Maia's got the power to really hurt Usman on the feet. I think sort of halfway through the second round, Maia's going to start gassing. Remember, it's a 5-round fight. I think once Maia starts becoming very tired, I think Usman will really start throwing these powerful takedowns at him, and this really good top control. I think Maia's sort of coming to the end of his career. He is declining. His cardio's taking a big hit, and I think when you get as tired as what Maia gets in fights, I just don't think he's going to have the energy to pull off a submission against someone that's that powerful and strong on top like what Kamaru Usman is. I think Usman will finish him with strikes in the championship round. So my pick is Kamaru Usman to win by TKO. The next fight, we've got Alexa Grasso versus Tatiana Suarez. I am really high on Tatiana Suarez. I'd have loved to have bet her. She's like -600, -700 now. It's actually got to a point where it's very disrespectful for Alexa Grasso, because Alexa Grasso's fought the better quality of competition, beaten the better quality of competition. She's been more active as well. I think her striking, the difference between her striking and Suarez's striking is greater than the difference between Suarez on the mat and Grasso on the mat. So I do think Suarez is going to win. I think she'll win a decision. It could be a 29-28. I doubt it'll be a split. 29-28 or a 30-27 for Suarez. But man, don't bet this fight. Unless you're taking Grasso for a bit of value, throw a little bit of change at it. I get that. I wouldn't recommend a bet on Grasso just in general. I do genuinely think Suarez is going to be too much for her. But a bit of beer money, will go a long way. But yeah, Suarez to win by decision. And the next fight, we've got Veronica Macedo, I hope I've pronounced that right, versus Andrea Lee. It's not a fight that I taped. It's not a fight that I know too much about either girl. I do know Andrea Lee's got the wrestling on Macedo, so I do think that she could potentially, use this to win the fight. Macedo is 5-1 though, fighting out of the MMA factory. So decent, a little bit of a decent background. But then you look at her record, and she's been finished by Ashley Evans-Smith, which doesn't really put her in good stead. Yeah, I think I think Andrea Lee's going to beat her, and I'll go a win by decision. The next fight we've got Diego Rivas against Guido Canetti. Now, I'm actually back and forward a bit on this fight because you can only base fights on what you see in tape, and when you watch the most recent tape, Diego Rivas lost against Quinones. I think he'd be coming back off a decent sized layoff though. But it was how he lost. He was really inactive against Quinones. He really didn't do a lot at all, and he sort of knew he was going to lose after like about 2.5 minutes. And it's never good to see a fighter have that sort of mentality in the cage. And like I say, you could just see you knew he was going to lose that fight after you were halfway through the first round. Then you look at Guido Canetti, and it's a guy that's taken a lot of shit. He's also been stung by USADA as well, popped by USADA, sorry. He had a bit of time off for that because of suspensions and stuff like that, and he's also 38, 39, so he's getting quite old, but the guy's still pretty explosive. He's got good takedowns, he's aggressive. I think that Rivas is going to have to weather a storm here, and I think after round 1, Rivas might be able to start taking over. Obviously, if Canetti don't get him out of there in the first round, which I actually don't think he's gonna. And my pick will be Rivas to win by a late 3rd round TKO. Then the next fight, we've got Brandon Moreno against Alexandre Pantoja. This is a rematch of a fight in the Ultimate Fighter. They were both in the same Ultimate Fighter. I think it was the one where they were all champions and the winner got to fight Mighty Mouse at the end, which obviously was Tim Elliott. But Pantoja submitted Brandon Moreno in the second round of that, and then Brandon Moreno quickly came into the UFC and went on a run there. And when I actually watched tape on this to bet it, and I thought Pantoja absolutely hammered Brandon Moreno in that tough fight. But when I rewatched it, I was actually really surprised to what I saw, because that wasn't the case. Brandon Moreno was looking good against Pantoja, and Pantoja just kept on walking him down, and eventually he got him down, caught him with a submission, and finished him off. And it was a great win. I do think Pantoja both fighters have looked better since that fight, for sure. I just think Pantoja's just looking the little bit better fighter right now, though. And it's a really tough one to pick. This I think it should have been a pick'em. Pantoja's like -140, -150 favourite. I don't agree with that line, but ultimately I'm going to pick Pantoja to win, and I think he might win by a submission again. But yeah, really, really close fight, and definitely a dog or pass scenario as well. If you're not going to bet Brandon Moreno at plus money, then just stay away from the fight in total. Next fight we've got Poliana Botelho against Syuria Kondo. Again, don't really know too much about either girl. I know Kondo was, I believe she's an ex wrestler, and Botelho's a decent striker. I don't really have much else to give on this. Based on a win against Pearl Gonzalez in her UFC debut, opposed to a split with Chanmi Jion in her debut, I'm going to go Poliana Botelho to win via. I'll go a decision. I'll go a 3-round decision. But yeah, no confidence in this fight. Like I say, I haven't watched tape. I didn't think I'd be able to see any sort of edge in this, and it's really low level as well. So it's sort of, both fighters are quite green, and you're just sort of not sure what to expect. So next fight we've got Gabriel Benitez against Humberto Bandenay. Bandenay surprised a lot of people in his debut against Martin Bravo. A lot of people, I think Martin Bravo was like -300, and a lot of people obviously did write Bandenay off, and I think it was short notice as well, if I remember rightly. And Bandenay came out there and he fucking starched Martin Bravo, really made a statement, and he's an exciting fighter. If you watch tape on this, he's quick, he loves a firefight, he's got good hands, he's got good kicks, but ultimately I just think Benitez is he's just at a different level. He's 100% fought the better competition. He's coming off a great win against Jason Knight in his last fight, and I do think Knight was sort of off his game a little bit, but I ain't taking anything away from Benitez because I think it was definitely more of a case of Benitez being the better fighter rather than having the better night rather than Knight having the worst night. So there is a size advantage here for Bandonai, and it's something that did put me off because I just think that if Benitez does start struggling to get inside and starts to push harder to try and get inside, it will turn into a firefight. And once it turns into a firefight, anything can happen. One shot could put you down. That could be Benitez putting Bandonai down, but you're just not sure. So I will be picking Benitez. I think he will win. The line on him now is like -225. I think I wouldn't be playing that as my advice. But I do think Benitez will get the job done. I think he'll get the job done by a unanimous decision as well. Next up, we've got Henry Briones against Frankie Saenz. This line's crazy. Frankie Saenz opened at like -275. I do favour him. He's got probably the slightly quicker hands. He's definitely got the better wrestling and athleticism as well. Briones also doesn't really have too much to offer off his back. So if Frankie Saenz does score takedowns, which I think he will, I think it'll be a long night of Henry Briones. But man, I ain't even going to consider playing someone like Frankie Saenz at -275, and I wouldn't recommend anyone else to do so either. My decision is Frankie Saenz by decision. Next up, we've got Claudio Puelles against Felipe Silva. Felipe Silva coming off that brutal knockout by Taisumov, but let's be honest, Taisumov will put away pretty much everyone in that division if he catches them with that punch. There's absolutely no questions about that. He's a fucking he's a killer, man. He's an absolute killer. So I don't put too much stock into that. But Felipe Silva's got a good Muay Thai game. He wraps up the plum clinch really well, knees, elbows. He's got power as well. He's got a lot of knockouts on his record. Claudio Puelles isn't the greatest fighter at all. He doesn't look that great. He's got a decent single leg, and he is constantly looking for the takedown, which some people might be sat here listening to this thinking, oh well, why have you not taken him then if he loves the takedown? Obviously because I love guys that love getting fights to the floor, but that's the thing, his takedowns aren't that great, and his top control definitely isn't that solid either, and I don't think he's going to be able to keep a guy like Felipe Silva down. I think Felipe Silva's going to knock him out, but he's -300, which I'm definitely not playing a line like that. But yeah, ultimately I think Felipe Silva is going to knock him out. So that does it for the podcast. So just a quick message, really. If you listen to the podcast on the Newsome MMA YouTube channel, it's also available on the Newsome MMA website as well, along with so much additional content surrounding all aspects of MMA. It's really got something for everybody on there, from betting advice to prediction videos and podcasts from all the other great guys that do the podcast and prediction videos. It's not just me that puts out this free content. There's so many other people that are putting the hours in week after week. So definitely get onto the centralized place for prediction videos and give the other good guys a watch as well. And also specific content coming from Heavy Duty Fight Management as well, which is a company I work very close with. They've got some awesome fighters under their banner: Mark Jacasey, Scott Askham, Alexander Rakic. So I drop their featured content out on my site for them. So definitely go ahead and check that out also. And also check out the sponsors of Newsome MMA as well, which is CBD Life UK. You can access any of the offers from my sponsorship by clicking the banners that are across all pages of the Newsome MMA website. And you also get 15% off your first order as well if you use promo code Newsome MMA, all in capital letters. So don't miss out on those offers. Aside from that, you can check out my record on betmma.tips/Newsome MMA. Like I say, I'm on a 6-fight card winning streak at the minute, so you can see exactly what I've been betting on, what I've been winning, what I've been losing, because I haven't hit any sweeps apart from the cards where I have just put a single fighter on, obviously. But yeah, man, my confidence is crazy at the minute, and it's awesome when I can have this sort of confidence and I'm watching tape and I'm really, really dissecting these fights. So I think this Saturday is going to be another winning night. I think I'll make it 7-0. A 7-fight card win streak, and yeah, I think we'll keep that ball rolling. So again, thanks a lot for listening and tuning in. If you are watching this on YouTube, give it a like, give it a subscribe, drop a comment in as well. I'll comment when I can get around to that also. I really do appreciate all your support, and until then, we'll see you next week for UFC Liverpool, which I'm stoked about as well. Thank you.